Okay, welcome everybody. Here's another episode. I think it's 6. Yes, it is 6. Number 6, Jeremy. We're moving on.
All right, 6. The number of man.
Yeah. And in the description, I mentioned St. Herman of Alaska. We might actually not get into St. Herman this time. He's got a really long story, and we might have to dedicate an episode just to him.
Yep, I agree.
Yeah,
I agree.
But we're gonna tackle St. Innocent of Alaska, and then Jeremy has 2 other saints. Maybe you could mention their names, Jeremy.
Yep, it's now Saint Nicodemus, the Albanian of Elbasan, and we have Saint Aquilina of Thessaloniki, and both of these were recommended by my priest. He said these would be good. You should share them.
Well, we'll find out when they were. We'll find that out soon enough.
Yeah, well, I can mention they were in the 1700s. Both of them were. So.
Okay, I'm on YouTube, right? Yeah, I am. Okay, good. Just checking, because last time I was on Facebook, and then when I started my conversation with Jed that one time, we were talking for the longest time, and it just kept saying 0 viewers, and I'm like, what the heck? That's weird. Because at least somebody will, tune in.
Right.
And then I realized it was on Facebook. So yeah. I don't know if we should just give it a few more minutes for people to join or get started.
Yeah, we just have one. Let's wait a minute. Let's
wait a little.
We were talking about this book. Beforehand. Let me tell you about this book. So that'll give us a little bit of time. So there's a book called The Art of Seeing, and I'll actually pull up. Oh, whoops. Wrong. Oh, man. Okay. So it's The Art of Seeing. Oh, I only have one monitor right now. It's killing me. Okay. So I have it's the book. Yeah, I'll share it. I'll share my screen.
Okay.
Share screen. Okay. And I'll share this window.
Steven's here. Steven.
Great.
I dropped a link. So if you want to join later, that would be great. Oh, here we go. Okay, here's the book.
Yeah, so this is the book, The Art of Seeing. I'll click on it so you can see. The Art of Seeing, Paradox and Perception in Orthodox Iconography. So this is written by Father Maximus Constas. Father Maximus was a Harvard professor for some time. He's also a monk. He's a priest monk. And he is one of the world's foremost scholars on St. Maximus the Confessor. Didn't
we have a conversation with Jonathan Pajot or somebody?
Yes, he has talked to Jonathan Pajot.
Okay.
And he is an iconographer as well. So he has quite a pedigree. And but this book, what I love about it so much is that he just takes 3 icons and he really starts opening up all of the little details of the icons. And he starts explaining also the purpose of iconography as far as being, it's a window into heaven, it's a window into your own soul, and it's also a mirror, but it's like an aspirational mirror, so you should be working to see yourself in these icons.
That looks like something something to get, another book to throw on the pile. I actually have the meaning of icons by what's his name now?
I know what you're talking about. Losky,
yeah, Losky. Yeah. So when Jonathan Pajot's server first popped up, I joined it, and we formed a book club for that essay. Losky wrote an essay in the beginning of the meaning of icons, and we went through the essay, and I think it took us like 3 times, 3 meetings, 3 times that we met, and we read through it, and there wasn't a whole lot of discussion. And then we were like, okay, well, that was great, and then Jonathan Pajot jumped on, and he goes, read it again. That was the only time actually he ever said anything to us.
That's
on
funny.
that server. And he goes, "You're," because someone said we're done, and he goes, "You're not done."
Yeah. Well, and then you have a whole book, right? And there's like beautiful fold outs of huge icons and
Oh
stuff.
yeah, it's beautiful. It's a
a
beautiful
really
book.
nice book. Yeah, it's
It's a
well
beautiful
made.
book.
That was
Yeah.
actually the first Orthodox book I read.
You
Talk
read
about jumping off in the
I
deep
only
end, right?
actually
I was like,
I only actually read the essay in the very beginning,
yeah.
and then I never got any further than that in it, to be honest with you. I have so many books to read, Jeremy. It's just pathetic. Like,
I understand.
I figure at some point I'm gonna get hit with some kind of like terminal illness that is not gonna affect my eyesight.
Right.
I'll be bedridden and I can just
You just read.
My biggest problem is I'm always busy with my hands, and I never wanna just sit with a book. I'm always thinking I could be knitting.
Oh, right.
I
Yeah.
actually got myself this app, which I never use because it's a pain in the ass, to be honest. But it'll, you can put PDFs and stuff like that in there, and it'll read them to you.
Oh, yeah.
But then I found out my iPad will actually do that, and I can get some pretty good voices on it.
There you go. Yeah, nice.
So it's weird. It's actually weird having AI read you.
Yeah, some of their intonation, like the rhythm and the intonation is always a little off. It always feels like a little weird, like a little stilted.
Yeah, they're getting better though. Scarily
True.
better.
Yeah.
Yeah. Hi, Ron. Nice to have you.
Hello, Ron. Mandy's here.
Yeah.
Steven's here. We've got some other lurkers here. Welcome, lurkers.
Lurkers are here. Yeah. Okay. Well, then we can get started, Jeremy.
Okay, great. I'll start with Saint. Do you want to save Saint Innocent for the last?
Sure. Yeah,
Okay.
because there's so much to talk about in that story.
Yeah. I'll go through these others because they're a little shorter.
Okay.
What happened was I told my priest, Father Paul, that we were talking last week about Saint Nicholas the Turk, and he had never heard of him. He didn't know it, so I got to
introduce him to.
Yeah, I got to introduce my priest to a saint, which is a rare treat.
That's awesome.
But because he's really well read, so I was surprised. But anyway, so I shared that story, and he was like, "Oh, I've got a couple of martyrs that you should share." So
Cool.
one was a martyr. Yeah. Anyway, we'll get to it. Okay. So Saint Nicodemus, let me share my screen. Eventually we might be good at this, but not today.
It's okay.
Today's not the day of being good at it. Okay. And I'll just share the article as I read it. I think that works pretty well.
Yeah, sure.
Holy new martyr, Nicodemus, the Albanian of Elbasan. Again, apologies ahead of time. I'll do my best at pronouncing names and places. Please forgive me. I'm an American.
Good to me.
I'm from Vernal.
Vernal. Yeah. That sounds like such a Mormon name, actually.
Yeah, well, it's actually Latin for spring, like vernal equinox, right? So
right, yeah, and
that area had insane amounts of natural springs and water.
Yeah, that's what it's about. Vernal pools, and it sounds very Edenic, right?
Yeah. Yeah. It was nice. Anyway, there was a story. They said that because there was so much water, the sagebrush was so high that you could be riding on a horse. You could be sitting on a horse and you could barely see over the tops of the sagebrush.
Wow. We got a lot of sage here too, actually.
Yeah, it was crazy. So, okay. Holy new martyr Nicodemus, the Albanian of Elbasan. And he reposed in 1722. His feast day is July 11th. Nicodemus carried a rod in his hand to strike the error of the lawless Hagarenes. St. Nicodemus was born in the city of Elbasan in Albania to pious parents. When he came of age, he went to Berat, where he practiced the trade of tailoring. He then married 3 times. For each time, his wife died at a young age, and he was left with many children. When he tried to marry a 4th time, he was not permitted in accordance with Orthodox canon law. This left Nicodemus bitter, so he went to a Muslim bey to ask for his servant as his wife. But the bey would agree only if Nicodemus converted to Islam. In his desperation to marry a fourth time, Nicodemus accepted the bey's offer and agreed to convert. Nicodemus therefore professed Muhammad to be a prophet of God and accepted the Quran as divinely inspired. He became a devout Muslim and desired all of his children to convert with him. This was deemed unfortunate by the pious Christians who knew the family. So while all the children became Muslims, certain Christians secretly took the oldest son and brought him to Mount Athos to escape conversion. When Nicodemus heard of this, he went to Mount Athos with the intention of recovering his son and taking revenge on the monks. Arriving at the holy mountain of Athos in search of his son, Nicodemus suddenly had a change of heart and repented of his stubborn refusal to abide by the rules of the church. Nicodemus therefore decided to stay at the holy mountain to repent of his sins and return to his ancestral Orthodox faith. Yet he went beyond that, for after some time, he even became a monk and retained his name Nicodemus. For 3 years, he lived in strict ascetic discipline at the skeet of Saint Anna in the hut of the Ascension. But he was haunted by the saying of Christ that whosoever denied him before men would be denied by him in return. But if they confessed him before men, then they would be equally accepted by him. One day, Nicodemus went to Saint Akakios and revealed to him his plans to be a martyr. Akakios blessed Nicodemus and placed a rod in his hand, saying, "Take this rod and go to the Pasha, and with the power of God you will complete your martyrdom well." This blessing of Saint Akakios was reinforced by a vision he had of the Theotokos, who held a crystal chalice in her right hand and said to him, "Open your mouth and accept this chalice, for it will strengthen you. Confess Christ where you denied him." When Nicodemus tasted from the chalice, it was bitter like vinegar. He was then told that martyrdom was also bitter, but only for a short time, for the sweetness of paradise is everlasting. When Nicodemus revealed this vision to Savas, his elder, he was told, "Go and do what the Theotokos has revealed to you." The other fathers of the skeet met, and after conducting a prayer service, they sent him off with their blessing and the farewell advice, "Go in peace, and may the Lord and Savior strengthen you." Nicodemus then set his foot for his journey back to his homeland, where he had denied Christ, preparing himself for his martyrdom with strict fasting and temperance. He went to his former workshop, dressed as a monk, and all those who recognized him were surprised by his appearance and were in disbelief. When he was asked if he was the same person, he said, "Yes, I erred and was illumined by Jesus Christ and became a Christian once more." When his former Muslim friends heard this, they took him by the hand to the judge. When Nicodemus confessed his faith in Christ before the judge, he was beaten and thrown off the city walls of Berat, but he miraculously survived the fall. Muslims then continued to beat him till he was covered in blood. Nicodemus' response was, "O God, send your help from your holy place and strengthen me to finish the martyrdom in your name." And to the Muslims he said, "Hit me some more so I can join my Christ a bit sooner." Meanwhile, the Demogerontes, distinguished elders of the Christian community from the villages of Sinhe, Paftal, and Sadovich, came to Berat to announce their willingness to convert, together with their fellow villagers, to Islam. But when they saw Nicodemus and his willingness to die for his Orthodox Christian faith, they changed their minds, returned to their villages, and remained Orthodox Christians. Nicodemus was then examined by the Vali, and as was customary, he was flattered and promised riches if he converted back to Islam. Yet if he refused, he was threatened with death. Nicodemus remained steadfast in his confession, and for this he was subject to torture. Seeing that he remained firm with no intention of denying Christ as the true God, the Vali sentenced Nicodemus to die by beheading. After Nicodemus was beheaded on July 11th, 1722, certain Christians bribed the Vali to secure his permission for them to bury Nicodemus. He was thus buried in the church of the Theotokos at Mangalam in Berat, and there his sacred relic became a source of miracles. In 1967, many churches and monasteries were destroyed by the communists in Albania, and this included the resting place of St. Nicodemus relics. However, a devout Orthodox Christian, Ilya Kotzi, recovered the relics and kept them hidden. A few decades later, they were given to the monastery of the Theotokos in Elbasan. A portion of his relic is also at the skeet of St. Anna in Mount Athos. May we have the intercessions of St. Nicodemus.
Oh, that's a good story.
Yeah. I really liked in that one where it said, you have to, you denied me.
I know. I was thinking about
men,
that.
and so then Christ will deny you. And then if you confess him in front of men, then Christ will confess you.
Yeah, and imagine getting that conviction and knowing exactly what that meant for you.
Right. Right.
Like, for me, it would mean something totally different. For him, it was like, yeah.
Yeah, it was the highest stakes possible, right?
Totally the highest stakes, yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
Okay. Saint Aquilina of Thessaloniki. Let me share my screen. Aquilina, the new holy martyr of Christ, was born from Thessaloniki. Oh, and her feast day is September 27th. So she was from Thessalonica, from the village of Zegliveri, situated in the Artemari diocese. She was the offspring of a pious mother. Her martyrdom took place from the following set of circumstances. One day, the saint's father quarreled and wrestled with a Turkish neighbor, since both Christians and Turks lived side by side in this place. By the evil one's collaboration, he struck and slew the Hagarin, whereupon he was arrested by the local authorities. The Hagarin is the Turk. Whereupon he was arrested by the local authorities, who led him to the Pasha of Thessalonica to have him condemned. At this time, this area was under the rule of the Ottomans.
Okay.
So they were living together, but the Turks were in control. Now he was terrified of death and sought acquittal, so he offered to become a Muslim. Alas, his fall. Therefore they did not execute him. At that time, Aquilina was an infant nursing on her mother's milk. After the passage of some time, the Turks enjoined her father that he must have his daughter become a Muslim. He told them, "Do not be concerned about my daughter. She is under my authority, and I will convert her when I want." However, Aquilina's mother remained anchored in the faith of Christ and never ceased every hour to exhort her child to stand firmly in the faith of Christ and not to ever deny Jesus Christ. When the maiden reached 18 years of age, the Turks once again spoke with her father concerning the conversion. At this point, he summoned Aquilina and said, "My child, other Turks have approached me daily on the matter of your accepting Mohammedanism. Therefore, either now or a little later, you will become a Muslim. Only make the decision in a day or two, so the Muslims will not harass me." Yet the saint, who was ignited and inflamed with the love of Christ, with great courage declared, "Perhaps you think that I have the same little faith as yourself to deny my Maker and Creator, the Lord Jesus Christ, who submitted to the cross and death for our sake? I refuse. I am prepared to undergo the woeful torment, even death, for the love of Christ." By these superb and admirable statements, she was not the daughter of the thrice miserable father, but truly the daughter of Christ, the heavenly King. Observing the saint's unswerving belief, the father went before the Turks and divulged to them, "I am unable to induce my daughter to change her beliefs. You do with her whatever you will." Upon hearing this, they went into a flurry and immediately dispatched men of the court to apprehend the martyr. Seeing them approaching, the saint's blessed mother took hold of Aquilina and gave her this final instruction. Lo, my most beloved child and my sweetest daughter, Aquilina, behold, fruit of my womb, the hour has arrived of which I have warned you. Therefore, my girl, attend and obey my admonition. Display courage in the torments which you will face, and do not renounce Christ. Likewise, Aquilina replied, Have no fear, my mother, for I have this intention. The all-kind God will be my help. Pray for me. Thus they bid each other farewell with tears. The servant of the judge bound the saint and led her to the tribunal. The compassionate mother followed after her beloved daughter to the place of condemnation, since motherly feelings could not conceive of being separated from her dear child. However, those that had taken her into custody locked her inside the courtyard. Aquilina was taken inside into the presence of the judge, who in a coarse manner blurted out to her, You become a Muslim! You become a Muslim! The saint exclaimed, No, I will not become one. Never will I forsake my belief and my master, Jesus Christ. Hearing this, the judge became incensed. Therefore, he commanded that the saint be undressed and be left wearing only her chemise. Chemise. Then they tied Aquilina to a column, and 2 servants beat her with rods for many hours. Notwithstanding, the martyr underwent this torture bravely. Afterwards, the judge and other Turks had the martyr brought forward again before them. They began to flatter Aquilina and promise her expensive gifts if she would renounce the faith. But the bride of Christ possessed in her heart love towards her sublime bridegroom Christ and would not even consider their offers. Furthermore, since he was extremely wealthy, he brazenly proposed to her, Aquilina, become a Muslim, and I will make you my son's bride. Christ's martyr replied with an immense daring, You and your son go to perdition. With these words, the judge's wrath was kindled. They tied her again as before and flogged her for many hours. When they unfettered her for a third examination, the judge asked her, Hapless one, are you not embarrassed to be beaten naked in front of so many men? He said this because from the countless blows, her slip was in shreds and she was exposed. The judge continued, Either you become a Muslim or have your bones shattered before all. In refutation, she declared, And what attraction does your faith have for me to deny my Christ? Or what miracle of your religion shall I believe, since you have filthy and indecent lives? O fearless testimony, a noble reply worthy of heavenly praise, not from a gentle and delicate young girl, but from a valiant giant. All within earshot were disgraced, essentially by the brilliancy of her truthful speech. They were at a loss as to how to deal with her. In their rage, they scourged the saint mercilessly a third time, leaving her as dead. The earth was reddened by her blood, and her flesh fell in pieces to the ground. Next, they untied the martyr and had her carried by a Christian who was present to her mother's home, whereupon the mother embraced her daughter, who was breathing her last, and asked, My child, what have you done? As she came to herself slightly, the martyr exerted much effort to answer, and opening her eyes, beheld her mother. Oh, my mother, what else could I do except that which you instructed me? Behold, according to your command, I have preserved my confession of faith inviolate. Aquilina's mother raised her arms and eyes towards heaven and glorified God. After conversing with her mother, the martyr surrendered her soul into the hands of God on September 27th, 1764, and received the martyr's crown. St. Aquilina's most venerable and sacred relics straightway emitted a marvelous fragrance so divine that all the streets which they traversed with her martyric relics for burial were filled with scent. At night, a heavenly light descended upon and illuminated Aquilina's tomb like a shining star. All the Christians who observed this phenomena praised God, to whom is due glory and power unto endless ages. Amen. May we have the intercessions of Saint Aquilina of Thessaloniki.
So these are martyrs from the reign of the Ottoman Empire in Greece and surrounding countries then, right?
Yes, that's correct. Yep.
You know, excuse me, my sister watched, I'm sure you're familiar with it. There's a Turkish series on Netflix, or there was a Turkish, I don't know if it's still on there. I think it was called Resurrection, or what was it called? It was about the Ottoman Empire. It was a historical series, but it was the Turkish series. And she said it was so interesting to watch. I think it has like 99 episodes or some crazy thing.
Whoa.
And when she finished it, she's like, "Finally, I'm done." She texted me. But she said that it was really, really interesting to watch because the bad guys were the Christians in the series.
Right. Yes.
Right?
Yeah, that's how it is.
And then,
Yeah.
and you know, somebody would be moving around and suddenly a cross would slip out from underneath their tunic and everyone would go, "Ooh," you know.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
But it was
It's
just it was so interesting being on the other side of that story, you know,
right.
for a while.
Yeah, they associate Christians with like mafia, like gangsters, especially in that
Really?
series.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Oh, okay, okay. Do you
Like
remember
the
the name?
organized crime.
Okay. Yeah, see, I didn't watch it. She
Yeah.
just told me about it.
I've seen a few episodes.
Okay.
My father-in-law is Turkish. Well, he was
Yeah,
Turkish, and he lived with us for a couple of years at the end of his life. So I've seen a few episodes of that show.
right. Yeah. Yeah. Well, thank you for those, Jeremy. Those were good.
Yeah, well, thanks go to my priest. He was the one who
Mhm.
said that we should share those. So
Yeah.
he said, in the spirit of talking about Saint Nicholas the Turk last week, we should talk about a
Right.
couple of
And it's again these like kind of obscure saints, right? These ones that
yeah,
are not as well known, and
yeah.
that's really great to share
What
those.
and I really like how defiant she was, Saint
Mhm.
Aquilina, because you know we also like I shouldn't speak for everyone. I shouldn't use we. I should say I definitely have like a preconception. You know, like oh Saint, she's being martyred. She would be like silent as a lamb, or you know deferential, or just be in
Mhm.
prayer or whatever. But no, she was like openly defiant
You know
really
what I think of when I hear those kinds of stories, because like yes, at that time women, especially in an Islamic state, would have like no value whatsoever.
right.
And yet women are human beings and they think and they have opinions and they're intelligent and you know just as the next guy, right? But
Yep.
they can't say anything, and so it's like if that you know if that's the hill you're going to die on, you might as well say say what you think, you
That's
know.
it. Yeah, you finally got your shot, right? You finally got your
This
chance
is it. This is it,
to
you know.
tell them how it is, right?
Yeah. And I mean, I often think that you know women that ended up martyred like that, they were of an obstinate, they had to have some kind of strength within them in order to actually get there, you know, to
Yeah,
that place where they're being
right.
beaten, right?
Well, especially so young too, right?
Right.
Like that's a fiery spirit right there,
Yeah,
you know. So
totally.
yeah, glory to God.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right, you ready for Saint Innocent of Alaska?
Yeah.
Okay,
Ready.
let me share my screen. Mhm. There we go.
That this is one of my favorite stories, and it's one of the first saints that I really dug into when I started inquiring into the Orthodox Church. So,
The angels of the island of Akun, they taught him to pray with the spirit and the heart. Saint Innocent of Alaska. Yeah, this is a beautiful painting too. I really like that painting.
Mm-hmm.
Saint Innocent of Moscow, equal to the apostles and enlightener of Alaska.
That's
From
pretty high
17
praise, eh?
Yeah,
Equal to the apostles?
equal to the apostles. Yeah, that's
Wow.
not a title that's given to very many saints. There are a few that have that. I think Saint Mary of Magdalene has that title as well. And then
Right.
there's a few
Yeah.
others. Yeah, there's
Yeah.
not many.
No.
An enlightener of Alaska, 1797 to 1879. And some of that is because he is the enlightener. Like he was the first one to bring the gospel to Alaska. But
Right.
so he is a messenger, but they're basically saying he's a messenger in the pattern of the apostles.
Right. Right.
So,
yeah.
Commemorated on March 31st, which was his repose, and on October 6th, which was his glorification. So he gets 2 feast days.
Oh, okay.
Saint Innocent of Moscow and Alaska, born Ivan Popov Vyaminov in Irkutsk, Russia, spent over 30 years in Alaska, first as a missionary priest and later as bishop of Kamchatka and the Kuril and Aleutian Islands. In 1867, he was named Metropolitan of Moscow and served as the first hierarch of the Russian Church until his repose. Buried in Holy Dormition Cathedral at Holy Trinity, St. Sergius Lavra, near Moscow, he was canonized a saint in 1977 by the Moscow Patriarchate. One of the most striking events of his early years as a young missionary priest was Father John's astonishing meeting with an elderly Aleut on a missionary journey to the island of Akun. Many of Akun's villagers had been baptized 30 years earlier by Hieromonk Makary, one of the original Valam monastery monk missionaries. Hindered, however, as Father John explains, by the lack of a fluent translator, Father Makary had only given a rudimentary explanation of the faith and reposed before he could return. So in other words, they didn't know all the theology and all of the charts and terminology.
Yeah, they didn't know much, probably.
No, but they knew enough to get baptized and to be faithful.
Right.
Anyway, I'm sorry that's my intercession. I'll stop. Or yeah, that's my interjection. Sorry. Okay.
That's okay.
When Father John arrived in 1828, he was told of a series of miraculous events that had sustained the faith of these local Christians, which he reported first to his Archbishop Michael of Irkutsk, and later in a less formal retelling to the Holy Synod. Here begins his report to the Synod. In April 1828, during Great Lent, I went for the first time to the island of Akun to visit the Aleuts. Approaching the island, I saw them all standing on the beach, dressed as if for a celebration, and when I stepped ashore, they joyfully rushed to greet me. When I asked why they were so festively dressed, they answered, "Because we knew that you had set out and would arrive today. We, in great joy, have come down to the shore to meet you." "Who told you that I would come today? And how do you know that I am Father John?" "Our shaman, old Ivan Smirnikov, told us and described you just as we see you now." I found this rather strange and astonishing, but I didn't give their words much attention and set about instructing them on how to prepare for Holy Communion. The old shaman, too, came to me, expressing his desire to prepare for communion. He attended the services very diligently, but I still did not give him any special attention, and after serving him the Holy Mysteries, let him go. However, to my great surprise, after taking Holy Communion, he went to his chief and expressed his dissatisfaction with me because I hadn't asked him at confession why the Aleuts call him a shaman. He found it very unpleasant to be called shaman by his own people, whereas in fact he was not. The Toyon informed me of old Smirnikov's discontent, and I immediately sent for him that we might clarify the situation. Those I had sent for him were still on the way when they met Smirnikov coming towards them. He said, "I know that the priest Father John is calling me, and I am coming to him." I began to question him in detail about his life, and when I asked him if he could read, he answered that although he could not, he knew the prayers and the Gospels. I then asked him to explain how he knew me, how he had been able to describe my appearance to his people, and how he had learned on a certain day that I was to come to teach them to pray. The old man answered that 2 friends had told him about it. "Who are these 2 friends of yours?" I asked. "They are white people," the old man replied. "They also told me that in the future you will send your family home by the coast, and you yourself shall sail by water to the great man, the Tsar, and speak with him." "Where are these friends of yours, the white people, and what are they like?" I asked him. "They live nearby in the mountains, and they visit me every day." "And when did they first come to you?" In reply, he told me a wonderful story. Soon after he was baptized by Hieromonk Makery, there appeared to him, unseen by anyone else, first one spirit, and then a second, in human form, white-faced and clothed in white garments that, according to his description, looked like deacon's vestments trimmed with rose-colored bands. They told him that God had sent them to instruct, teach, and protect him. For 30 years, they had appeared to him almost daily, in the daytime or late afternoon, but never at night. They instructed him in Christian teaching and in the mysteries of the faith. Also, they rendered him help in illnesses, and at his request, others, though rarely. They always responded to his appeals, saying, "We will ask God, and if he gives his blessing, we will fulfill this." Sometimes they informed him of what was happening in other places. Very seldom they told him the future, and always with the remark, "If God wills to disclose it," meaning that they did this not through their own power, but by the power of God Almighty. Although the teaching of these spirits seemed to be the doctrine of the Orthodox Church, I, knowing that the demons also believe and tremble, wondered if this wasn't a shrewd and subtle trap of the evil one, and asked him to show how the spirits taught him to pray, to themselves or to God, and how they taught him to live with others. He replied that they taught him to pray with the spirit and the heart, and sometimes prayed with him for a long time. They taught him to practice all of the Christian virtues, which he described to me in detail, and that above all, they advised to observe faithfulness and purity, both within and outside of marriage. Moreover, they taught him virtuous behavior and rituals, such as how to make the sign of the cross, that we should never begin to do anything without asking God's blessing, that we should not eat early in the morning, that many families should not live together, and the like. Then I asked if they had appeared to him that same day after communion, and if they had told him to heed what I said. He answered that they had appeared both after confession and after communion, saying that he should not tell the sins he had already confessed to anyone else, that right after communion he should not eat foods rich in fat, and that he should attend to my teaching. They even appeared to him that day on the way to me and told him why I was calling him, and that he should tell me everything without fear, because nothing bad would befall him. Then I inquired what he felt when they appeared to him, joy or sorrow. In their presence, he said, he felt pangs of conscience if he had done something wrong, but other times he did not feel any fear. As many people considered him a shaman, and he was unwilling to be thus treated, he repeatedly asked them to depart from him. However, the spirit's reply was that they were not demons, and they were not allowed to leave him. When he asked why they never appeared to other people, they said that such was the command they had been given. To make certain that his guides had indeed appeared, I asked him if I could possibly see and speak with them. He answered that he didn't know and would have to ask them. Indeed, he returned within an hour, saying that they had replied, "What more does he want to know about us? Does he still consider us to be demons? All right, let him see us and talk to us if he wishes." They then said something favorable about me, but so that it will not be taken as vanity on my part, I will keep silent about this. Then something inexplicable happened inside of me. I was seized with a feeling of fear and overwhelming humility. Indeed, I thought, what if I see these angels and they confirm all that the old man has said? How can I appear before them? Sinful that I am unworthy of speaking to them, and it would be pride and presumption on my part if I dared to go to them. Meeting angels might make me too proud of my faith or think too highly of myself. So I, the unworthy one, finally decided not to go to them. I gave some preliminary instructions as to these events, both to Smirnikov and his Aleut people, and told them that they should no longer call Smirnikov a shaman.
Maybe just read those footnotes there quickly.
Sure, yeah. According to Father John's diary, he arrived in Akun on 12th of April, 1828, leaving on 24th of April. His talk with Smirnikov was on the evening of the 23rd of April. 10 years later, in 1838, Father John did indeed send his family home across the Bering Sea, up the coast to Okhotsk, then overland to Irkutsk. In November of 1838 to June 1839, Father John himself embarked on a voyage halfway around the world, sailing from Sitka to St. Petersburg, around the Cape of Good Hope on the Russian ship Nicholas I, in order to report directly to the Synod and the Russian government about the conditions in Russian Alaska. After the sudden death of his wife, Catherine, Father John made arrangements for his children in Irkutsk, and the following year took monastic vows with the name Innocent. It was as Archimandrite Innocent that he was granted an audience with Tsar Nicholas I, as Smirnikov had prophesied, and at the Tsar's expressed wish was consecrated bishop. In an almost identical version of the letter published in Barsukov's life, 4 years after St. Innocent's repose, the angels rendered assistance in case of illness or extreme lack of food.
There you go. That is just the best story ever.
Yeah. 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 Well, yeah, I guess now we know why they didn't need much instruction from the original saint who baptized them, right? The original priest. The angels showed up to teach them.
Right.
So.
Yeah. Can you enlarge just that painting by any chance?
Let me.
Will it?
Yeah, I just have to share it as a new tab. Hold on.
It's just such a beautiful painting.
Yeah, it is really nice. It's worth focusing on. Is it that? No.
Oh, did Ron go to bed? Ron said, "Great reading, thanks." Good night.
There we go.
Right, there we go. Isn't that beautiful? Yeah. Wow. You know, it's funny because I've been talking, my daughter's been recently just texting me about, "Mom, what about all the other people in the world that don't have the Bible?"
Mm.
You know?
Yeah.
Like, and she just wants to, it's eating at her, you know?
Yeah,
And,
it's a hard question. I had that same conversation with my wife last week, actually.
yeah, and she's like, do we have to, do we have to have a Bible? And I said, well, there are 2 books. There's creation and there's the Bible, right?
Yeah.
And, the heavens declare the glory of God, and all, what's the other one there? I used to know it, but it's escaping me at the moment, about creation. But yeah, so, and then there's angels, Jeremy.
Yeah, exactly. Right.
Right?
Yeah. Well, and St. Paul talks about it too, that we'll be judged, like every man is given the law in his heart, and we'll be judged by how we live according to that law, right?
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah, there's that. But I mean, I just really want to, savor that story a little bit.
Yeah.
Because God did not leave those people without instruction.
Right.
You know?
Yeah. Yeah. And like frequent and consistent instruction.
Well, what was it, 30 years?
Yeah.
Every day?
And on the little details, every day. Yeah. And on the little details, how to make the sign of the cross and how to fast.
I read a different, and I read a different version of that story where they mention it briefly in that story about how the shaman didn't want to be called a shaman.
Yeah.
And he really struggled with it, according to this other version of the story that I read. But because a holy man was a shaman to the people, he was just, that's what they called him. And for some reason, even though he was a shaman, okay, this is the thing, he didn't want to be called one, and so he asked the priest to instruct the people not to call him one,
Yeah.
So that was just so interesting to me.
And what's interesting is that they also respected the priest enough to heed that, right? He had been asking them, "Hey, don't call me that. Don't call me that." And then when the priest said, "Hey, don't call him that," they were like, "Oh, okay. Sorry."
There we go. Angels are a creation. That's right. That's right. Yeah, no, I know. It's just such a beautiful story of God's grace and care, and also the faithfulness of a people who really, when he arrived, they were all standing there all dressed up and they were waiting for him.
And they haven't seen anyone for 30 years, right?
I know.
And so half the people there probably had never, weren't there for the first one, right? It had been 30 years. So a lot of the younger people, they have no idea.
No, that's a whole generation, maybe even two,
Amazing.
And yeah. I've lived in some faraway places in Canada, in the north and stuff. And I mean, this is at a time when there was and they were Aleuts, so they were on an island.
Yeah.
I had some friends that lived on one of the islands in the Aleutian Islands. He was a school teacher there. I met them when at the school that my husband and I met each other at, and they met each other there too. They got married before we did. And he was from Vancouver, Washington, and she was from British Columbia. Excuse me. And their first, he ended up becoming a school teacher, and he just wanted to do the remote places in Alaska. And so that's what they did. And I mean, I remember their first place, they lived in a sod house on a river somewhere that you could only fly into, and most of the places that they worked at and they weren't with a mission. They were school teachers.
Yeah.
Right.
And they wanted to teach in those places where no one had come.
Yeah. Yeah. And it was always fun to hear from them because we'd get letters with photos of, Tyler's in Nome, Alaska now, and he's building his own dog sled, and stuff like that.
That's fun. That's
cool. And then they were on this little island in the Aleutian Islands, and the whole island, the Aleutian Islands are really interesting because they're really far north, but they're fairly warm actually. And the island they were on was called Umnak. And there was, I think, 50 people on the island. And there was no trees, just grass. And they had earthquakes almost every single day.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That's wild.
Wow. And then I guess sometime in the early 30s or 20s or something, some Texan rancher decided, because it was all grass, that he was going to make his fortune up there with breeding cows for meat,
Mm-hmm.
and brought horses and cows and then abandoned the project. So there were wild cows and wild horses on this island. And so when people wanted food, they just shot a cow.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah,
that's pretty cool.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. The stories those people had.
Yeah, living. I mean, obviously, I'm not the only one. There's a whole industry of television and books and movies around people living on the edge, of survival, the edge of human capability, and it's always inspiring, and it's always, I feel a little wistful about it because I live a very sheltered and boring and stable life. Not all, I haven't always. I've definitely had my crazy times,
Yeah.
but now it's always like, now I'm always just like, man, probably should have tried some more of that in my life, but
oh well.
it's all right. Yeah. Now we wander the chasms within, hoping to find peace.
Yeah. There was something that popped into my head when you were talking about that. Yeah. I think I read that when Saint Innocent went, I think it was him. Now I'm wondering if it was Saint Herman, but I think it was Saint Innocent that when he left to go to Alaska for the first time, it took him 14 months. Oh, that's what I was going to say. Irkutsk. Irkutsk is like one of the coldest cities in Russia, as far as I know.
Wow.
Like that isn't even a fun place to be from.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. I'm going to look on a map where that is.
I think it's Irkutsk. Irkutsk. I think it's like one of the coldest places.
I believe it.
Yeah.
Oh, it's just north of Mongolia.
North of Mongolia?
Yep, just north of Mongolia. Like the middle of Mongolia. I'll share my screen.
Yeah.
We'll do a geography lesson for all the Americans who have no idea where anything is, including me.
I'm always just astonished at the way people traveled back in the day. Like, honestly.
Oh, I know. Yeah, I know. Well, here's what was cool too, is that you just stayed at, you didn't stay at Motel 6. There was no hotel. Even the idea of like an inn was not really as common as like literature makes it. You just stayed at strange people's houses. You just knock on the door. It's like getting close to sunset. And you're like, can I stay here tonight? And they're like, yeah, sure. Can you tell a story? And you're like, yeah, I can tell stories. And they're like, we'll give you dinner if you can tell us some stories. That was like common. Like that's how you just stayed at stranger people's houses because they didn't have like a real concept of privacy either. It was just
right. Yeah.
So,
okay,
anyway.
now I'm going to look up coldest city in Russia because for some reason I thought it was Irkutsk, but that looks south actually for Russia.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I actually had a relative who fought in World War I. He was an American soldier who fought in Eastern Russia during World War I.
Yeah.
Not many people know that America sent soldiers to Eastern Russia in World War I, but we did. And he was chosen because he was from Duchesne, Utah, which is a very cold place here in Utah. And they were picking guys from like Michigan, Wyoming, Minnesota, North Dakota, and then Utah, because they needed guys who could survive the cold. And still, like half of them died. That's how cold it was.
Yeah. Okay. So now I know why I thought it was Irkutsk. It's a similar sounding word. It's Yakutsk.
Oh,
Yakutsk is the coldest city in the world. It was. It says here, record low temperature was recorded on February the 1st, 1891, at minus 83.9 degrees Fahrenheit.
Wow. Minus 83.
Minus 83.
That's insane. Yeah. Okay. I'll share my screen here. I'll show you where that is.
Yakutsk. It's actually a town. I mean, how do you run that thing when it's cold out? How do you run anything in that town?
Yeah, really.
I mean, when we lived in Telegraph, we had like minus 38, and it was like everything just doesn't want to run.
Right. Yeah. Well, you have to. So I worked in Wyoming for a couple of winters, and sometimes you'd have to leave your truck running all night, and you have to leave it running in neutral. Because if you put it in park, the transmission doesn't turn over and the transmission would gel. So you had to, like, the lubricant inside the transmission would just turn into gel, and it wouldn't be able to move. You couldn't get it into gear, so you had to leave it running in neutral. And yeah, you would just leave your truck running all 24 hours a day. What is that called? That's the classic where you can like go out with a cup of hot water and just throw it into the air, and it turns into powder. It just
Yeah. So this is Yakutsk.
That's cold, yeah.
It looks like a fairly large city, though. Look at it.
Yeah, that's crazy. Let's look at some photos. Where's the photos? Oh, here we go. Oh, look at the church. Wow. A little bit of Soviet remnant there. Definitely, you can see the Soviet housing in the background.
Yeah.
But that church, look at that. That's amazing. Oh yeah, there's quite a few people live in the coldest place in the world.
What the heck are they doing up there?
Who knows? That looks very Russian. Looks very Soviet, I should say.
Very, very Soviet.
Also that's
yeah.
Brutalism.
That looks newer.
Oh, that looks like some Islam is there too. Look, that's a mosque.
That's a mosque, yeah.
Wow. Woof. That is Soviet Russia right there. Oh.
Not a whole lot growing in that spot. Oh, look at that. That's a nice one.
Yeah, that's beautiful.
That's nice.
Another Soviet statue.
Yeah. I went to a
Is that
Soviet.
Trotsky? That looks like Trotsky.
Yeah, I don't know.
I can't read Cyrillic. What were we going to say? I'm sorry.
Oh, I went to a Russian memorial when I was in Berlin for the Second World War. It was just incredible. We're not talking about saints right now, but just look that up. Russian Second World War memorial in Berlin. It was actually in the DDR, but now it's all Germany, right? And I went with my my son's wife's wife, my son and his wife, and her parents, and they were from the DDR when it, like they were on the other side of the wall, on the communist side of the wall, and that's where she was born. Anne was born. The wall came down, I think, when Anne was 4.
Wow.
And they used to go there for the celebrations, like for their memorial days. And yeah. There must be more than one. Yeah, see, there's that second picture. Okay, there's a lot, because there's a lot going on here. See this statue right here? This big statue in the second picture?
Okay, yep.
That's at the other end of it.
Oh, okay. Oh,
And
wow.
look at how small the person is compared to that statue.
Yeah, that's quite a monument.
It's incredible, and it's a Soviet Russian soldier with a child in his arms, and he's got his feet on the swastika that's broken.
Wow.
And there was something like, and then as you walk down this giant alley, like that gate that you showed at the beginning is on the other end of this. Yeah. And it doesn't show it there, but there's 2 gates, and there's 2 Russian soldiers with their heads bowed, and they're on a bended knee.
I'll see if I can find that.
It's right here. It's right there. It's
here.
Yes. See, you walk through there. You walk between those guys to see the statue, and then you can see all those white stones along the path there.
Yeah, here.
And each one of those has an engraved saying by Stalin about the loss of life, the loss of Russian life.
Wow.
And anyway, it was just interesting being there with people who were East German at one point. Okay.
Yeah.
And they and they, they both said to me, they still feel choked up when they're there. And some teenagers came by with these electric scooters just whizzing, and they were upset by that because it was disrespectful.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I was standing in German, they would call it a Zwiespalt. It's like being divided in two, standing there. You feel like you've been divided in two.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Because you're standing, it's a battle between communism and Nazism.
Right.
Right?
Right.
And what kind of emotions should you or could you or would you feel? Like it's a very surreal. It was really surreal for me because because I'm kind of very empathic. So I'm in it, eh? Like I'm just like I'm reading all Stalin's sayings, and it was just a really interesting. Yeah.
Oh wow.
Yeah, it was just. Oh, this is the Holocaust Memorial in Berlin.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so I have to tell you about this.
Okay.
Because this is unbelievable. My son said to me, this was years ago when I first went there, and he said, "Mom, we have to go to the Holocaust Memorial." I said, "Okay." And we got there, and I was just kind of standing on the outside of it, and I was looking at it going, "Oh, this is typical modern art. Like, it's terrible. Look at it. It's awful." Right?
Yeah.
Just a bunch of concrete blocks. But then you get into it, Jeremy, and you can walk through it. Okay? And when you walk through it, what happens is, see, if you look at that, all those concrete blocks, they all look about the same height.
Yeah.
But the ground undulates in there.
Oh, okay.
Okay?
Yeah.
And I walked in, and the concrete blocks were like about here. Okay? And then pretty soon I'm walking, and they're way over my head.
Wow.
And I suddenly started to weep. Because I could, at least to me, I could sense what the artist was saying. Because what he was saying was how these things, like, we just get lost. We can't see the forest for the trees.
Yeah.
Like, we're in it. And I'm talking about not just for the people who died in the Holocaust, but even for the German people.
Right.
Right? Yep. It just grew right over everyone's heads, right? At some point you have an overview. And you can go, oh, look at that. That doesn't look good, right?
Right.
But then you have to walk in it, right? You have to live in it. You have to live in Germany, or you have, whatever the case might be. For any human being involved in that whole thing, you're in it, and it just goes, and you have no idea where you are. You're in a maze. You're locked in. You don't know where you are. You're lost.
That's a really good way to put it.
It was so powerful,
Yeah.
Jeremy. It was so powerful. It was one of the most powerful experiences that I've ever had, actually, walking through there. I was just like, whoever did this, I don't even know who the artist is, but just amazing. Like,
yeah, that is.
And it's a very participatory piece of art, right?
Right.
Because you're in it.
You're not going to anticipate that looking at it from the outside, right?
No, you have no idea from the outside. You think you're just going to be walking through a bunch of concrete blocks, and suddenly you're swept up in the confusion, in the way it grows over your head, in the lack of oversight, in the dark, like
and gray, bland, everything blends together.
You're
Everything's
feeling
the same.
it all. Like, you're feeling it all, Jeremy. It's just amazing.
Yeah, it was very oppressive and like ominous, right? It's like overbearing.
Yeah,
it's like, but it's the banality of evil too.
But then you come up. Yes, it is the banality of evil. You come up out of it every now and then, and you go back down into it, right? So every now and then you get a glimpse of everything,
Oh,
of the whole thing,
yeah.
and then you're down in, and then you're halfway up, and then, like, it's undulating, right? So it's constantly moving up and down and all around, and it was
Mm,
it was amazing. Like,
yeah.
it was just amazing. I
Mm,
was like, "Okay, now I have a slight idea of what this must have felt like being in it," you
yeah.
know?
Mm,
And it translated for me, at least. It translated into what it was like being, you know, anyone who was sent to a concentration camp, whether you were Jewish or homosexual or gypsy or whatever, right?
Jehovah's Witness. Yeah.
Jehovah's Witness, whoever you were,
Yeah.
and but it also translated to what was happening to the masses in Germany.
Right. Yeah.
It was also that same, I could imagine. Like, if you had any kind of conscience, let's say, right? You were a good person, and like, at the beginning of this memorial, when you go to walk in there, you kind of go, "Uh-oh, it's ominous," right?
Mm,
You're walking into something that it's ominous. You have a feeling, and then suddenly it starts growing over your head, and you don't know what's going on, and you're kind of lost in it. It's the same. I don't know, it
mm,
was just amazing. I can't
yeah.
say enough about it,
Yeah.
as you
No,
can see.
yeah, it sounds amazing, and
If anybody goes to Berlin, you have to experience it. And that's the thing, you actually can experience it. You
mm,
can The artist was so ingenious that you can have a sense of what it must have felt like. You can.
mm,
I can't say that you would know, like,
sure.
but you have a sense for sure. Yeah.
Mm.
Yep. So that was we veered off wildly from.
Yeah, well, that happens here sometimes. That's okay.
Yeah, it does.
It's I mean, when you talk about the lives of the saints, it touches on a lot of different, it touches on a lot of different aspects of your life, and so it's easy to kind of relate and start just meandering, and plus we're in this little corner of the internet where
We can
uh,
do that.
we can do that. Yeah, we're not sponsored. We don't
Yeah.
have to take a break to read, any ad copy,
Mhm.
and we don't have any. There's no production director yelling in our ear, talking to us about what we can say or not say. So it's nice.
Yeah.
It's part of why I like it here. I like it because it's not commercialized.
Yeah. And no matter how much we mess up, we're loved.
Yeah, yeah.
At least I hope so anyway.
By God, at least, anyway, which is what matters most, right? So,
It is a special place for that reason too, though.
yeah, I agree. Yeah, people are very people come and generally have pretty good faith conversations, and
I think
and
so.
and also are pretty open and not easily offended generally. So that's nice.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, I was telling my wife that I said, the biggest reason why I hang out here regularly is just because it is so hard to find a place where you can have good faith discussions with people you don't agree with, or even people that it's not even that we disagree per se, but it's just like different
Perspectives.
viewpoints, and that's just
Yeah.
so, like, we don't go bowling anymore with you don't have your bowling team, and you don't have the Elks Lodge, you don't have dinner parties, and you don't have bridge club, and you don't have dominoes, and like none of the stuff where you would have to be around people that you don't agree with necessarily, or your friend, like
Mhm.
not around your family. It's like we've all been so atomized that we don't have these opportunities to like do the, opponent processing in groups. We just don't do it anymore because now it's also considered bad manners, right? Like that was another. I I lay that at the feet of the 30 Years War, honestly.
What's
Um,
what's the 30 Years War? I'm kinda down about these
oh
things.
no, 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 it's okay. So the 30 Years War is in was in Europe, part of the Reformation, and it was when the Lutherans and the Baptists and the Anabaptists all just got in a big, the Calvinists and the Anabaptists all got in a big fight for 30 years over who was right and who was wrong.
Right. Oh,
and
yeah.
started just slaughtering each other.
Yeah.
And and at the end of it, the truce was, okay, it doesn't really matter, and you, like, if you're of this faith, you can stay practicing that faith, but you can't convert. Everyone just defaults to the religion of the king of your country. Whatever the king is, that's what you are. And when all your children are born, that's what they're going to be baptized as. If you're already practicing something else, you can practice it in private, but you can't do it in public. So it's when religion became private, it became like separated and like
personal,
like the creeping of the secular,
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, it became personal, and it became like, I don't know, a matter of conscience, although religion has always been that, but it was like, it became very private. And as a result, you weren't supposed to talk about these things in public, right?
Mm-hmm.
You're not supposed to talk about religion. You're not supposed to talk about, meaningful things or challenging things, or, make waves. And I'm kind of a contrarian anyway, so I've never really followed those rules. Like if we're not talking about religion or politics, I'm pretty bored generally.
Yeah.
Right? Or philosophy, like I can fit that
Same
in too.
here.
But
I
like
woke up one
sports,
morning.
or like this guy was talking to me, a couple of weeks ago, and he's just like telling me all about his Etsy store and all this stuff, and it just was going on for like 20 minutes. I'm just like, I don't care. I don't care about internet marketing. I don't care about how you handle your 1-star reviews. It's not my thing, man. I'm sorry. I'm just not.
I know. I'm similar.
I like talking about, like, but I guess I'm also like a scab picker, like I like finding the seams of things and really like pulling at the seams and figuring out like the borders and the seams and the scabs. That's where I'm drawn. Like my mind is just drawn to piling in on that. Let's push on it, right? It's like, oh, it's a scab. Let's just push on it. Let's pick it. Let's make it bleed. Look, it bleeds. Oh, you're gonna have a really good scar. Like, pick it again. That's just my personality.
Okay. I get it now. So it's not necessarily, you're not like trying to make connections or anything. It's
not
you're
generally
actually trying to provoke.
No, I wouldn't say that. It's like, no, it's more like I like wrestling with difficult things,
right? Mm-hmm.
To get a better understanding of it, right? Like, because you learn about something and you have a certain approach and you bring your background to it, and then and I wrestle with things, and then bring stuff here and start talking about it, and all of a sudden you're wrestling with other people's views of it, and I just think that's really positive and really helpful, and there's just
like,
not many spaces for it anymore.
Don't leave me alone with my own worldview, please.
Yeah, no, I will quickly spiral into, like, I am the guy with the red yarn and the pictures in the garage, right? Like making all these connections between things that no one else sees, and they're just like, okay, buddy, whatever.
Yeah.
Why don't you come in and have some ice cream? Okay. No, I'm just saying I like this area. I like this space of the internet. I like, because we can come here.
I love, like, I personally, I just love being able to bounce ideas off of people. And, I mean, okay, so I don't know what it was, when it was, must have been like 8 years ago or something. I was not involved in conversations like this. I didn't know anything about philosophy. I was just living life, finishing up raising my kids, growing food, all that, boring stuff. And I woke up one morning and this line went through my mind: philosophy will save the world. I was like, what? What are you talking? What is this? What is philosophy? I thought philosophy was a bunch of people. I remember Steve Martin saying, if you have a degree in philosophy, raise your hand. And then he laughed and said everybody was like,
yeah.
I guess I couldn't decide. Yeah. And that's what I thought philosophy was. I didn't have a whole lot of respect for it.
I worked with a guy who had a master's in philosophy, and he was the shipping manager at a small company, right? So like
and then I ended
completely
up
unrelated. I'm like, how's your Marxism working for you now, buddy?
well, and then I just ended up, thanks to this little corner, right, 6 years ago, falling into philosophical thought. And that thought came like a couple years beforehand where I had no clue what philosophy was. And oh, hang on a second.
Oh, okay. Here we go. We're winging it. That was quick. What could I talk about? I will talk about. I don't want to share that story yet. I have a story of Saint Gabriel, but I don't want to share yet. It's so good. It's too good. Oh, I will. I'll share a different story about Saint Gabriel. Oh, and now she's gone again. Okay, so Saint Gabriel, the Fool for Christ. He's from Georgia. We'll see if we can get it to focus. This is Saint Gabriel. Saint Gabriel. One time there was a priest who was kind of complaining in front of him, who just was like saying, "Oh, fasting. I don't think it's that important. It's not that big of a deal." And there were a few people around, and Saint Gabriel just started naming off this priest's personal sins, and in front of everyone. And the priest, obviously got very embarrassed and fell down on his knees. And Saint Gabriel went on for a few minutes, and everyone's just standing there in stunned silence. And he said, "Okay, we're done." Saint Gabriel said to the priest, "Okay, we're done. You can go have lunch now." And the priest said, "I don't I don't really feel like eating anymore." And Saint Gabriel said, "That's fasting.
Wow.
That's fasting. When you are so deep into your own, realizing your own sinful nature that you don't really even feel like eating anymore. That's fasting."
Yeah. Had a moment of that recently. Grateful. Doesn't feel great, but it's actually been something that I've been asking for. And I don't know if I know what I'm asking for, but I feel compelled to ask for it. And yeah, I don't want to get into any details, but it's
Sure.
just like, it's like cleaning out the corners, doing like a big spring clean or something like that,
Yeah.
Um,
Oh yeah.
I
The
never
stuff
really
kind of bubbles up, over time. Stuff you
Yeah, and
forgot about.
wasn't anything that I felt like well, I guess there was a certain amount of ignorance on my part, earlier in my life where I didn't really know if there was anything I needed. I was kinda like, "Yeah, that's all dealt with. Yeah, we're good. Yeah, we're good." And then and now it's getting down to the nitty-gritty. You know? And
Yeah.
I'm just like, I need that. And it came also, Jeremy, with that sense that I really needed confession,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Yeah.
There were just some things that I didn't understand about that whole process. So, and on that note, like part of the reason why I've been wanting to do this Lives of the Saints too is to understand that kind of asceticism and what it's about and what it's accomplishing, right? Because it's a personal thing, but it's also a communal thing, right? That's why it happens in the setting that it happens in, but it's not just within that community. It's very fractal is what I'm trying to get across. Like, it's not just within that community, it's also within the town, for example. Like, who was the saint that we talked about recently where he came from a town where there was a monastery, right? And
Yeah.
then and so on. And so it's like, and I recently watched a beautiful podcast called The Devoured Man. It's a guy called, his channel is called The European Conservative, and he's got the most amazing interviews on there. He did one with Ian McGilchrist in a similar style. And so what he does is he arrives and, you know, they sit and talk, and then they have a meal together, and, you know, they go places.
Oh, wow.
So it's very embodied, right?
Yeah.
The whole conversation.
Like comedians in cars getting coffee, like with Jerry
Yeah,
Seinfeld.
I guess so.
Yeah,
But
I mean that's a lighter, like, but it is like they get in the car and they're driving their conversation.
Yeah, like the one with Ian
or to a
McGilchrist,
restaurant, they're eating.
they take a long walk.
Yeah,
all through his gardens and along a little river, and, you know, and they talk. And in the one that I watched with, this is a Catholic bishop by the name of Eric Varden. He's from Norway, Oslo, I think. And, you know, they start out on a park bench overlooking the ocean, talking about St. Mary of Egypt. And Bishop Varden is a Benedictine monk. I believe he's Benedictine. And he wrote a book called Chastity recently that has been, I don't know, making waves, I guess. Making waves. But really, really, really good. Really good conversation. I think the best I've seen on, and then interestingly enough, so that was, I don't know, I've watched that conversation 3 times.
Wow.
And then yesterday, Addison Hodges Hart featured it on his Substack. That's David Bentley Hart's brother.
Okay.
Who was an Anglican priest for many years and just got baptized into the Orthodox Church.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow. Maybe he'll help his brother go back to church.
I was just shocked. You know, he wrote, because I subscribed to his Substack, and he had a thing in there about how he was a cat, or he was, I don't know, I don't remember the article, but anyway, he was talking about his entrance into the Orthodox Church. And yeah, it was something that he had done early on in his life and then walked away from. And then he mentioned that the priest that he talked to before, you know, early on in his life, said when he left, he said, "You'll be back." And he actually never got baptized into the Orthodox Church at the time.
Yeah.
Then he went into Anglicanism, and he became an Anglican priest for I don't know how many years. And now he's back in the Orthodox Church.
Yeah.
Got baptized this time. Yeah. Anyway, and he shared the Bishop Varden conversation. So if anybody's interested in a really challenging and thoughtful and beautiful conversation on asceticism, chastity in the true sense of the word, not just sexual chastity.
Right.
But it's called, the podcast is called The European Conservative on YouTube, and that episode is the most recent one with, it's called The Devoured Man. So yeah.
Sounds excellent. Sounds good.
It is really good.
Speaking of, did you watch the Jonathan Peugeot, Nathan Jacobs?
I got about 3/4 of the way through it.
And
I haven't gotten back to it yet.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts?
Well, I thought that was a really succinct and really great case for realism and for a traditional worldview.
Right.
You know, but rather than from the symbolic language that Jonathan uses, he's coming at it from the philosophy language of, you know, Plato and Aristotle, and then later the early church fathers. And I thought it was really well articulated. And, you know, he was making the case that even perception itself is mystical. It's a mystical experience. To perceive something is to have a mystical experience.
Yeah, and I just I was rereading a Substack. I mistakenly thought it was one that a friend was pointing me towards, but it wasn't. But it was okay because it was so good anyway. By a guy named Stuart Lundy, where he talked about naming and how we can't perceive without naming something.
Right.
Right.
Yep. 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 Well, and they got into also being cautious about what you name for the same reason, right? Because as you name something and start to notice it and the phenomena around it, all of a sudden it grows.
Yeah.
And so you have to be careful with what you name, because there are some things you don't want to grow, right? Like that you don't want to bring attention to certain things. But when you name it and start talking about it all the time, even if you're doing it in protest, it's still gaining.
Well, here's an example.
It's gaining attention, right? It's growing through attention.
Yeah. And so this is something that let me see if I can find it.
5 people who are here, we love you. Or 6 people, or whoever you are. We're so glad you're here. We love you. This is just a chance for Shari and I to catch up after we talk to the Lives of the Saints.
Yeah. Oh, it's not showing up here. It was one of those YouTube posts that popped up today. It'll be here again.
The shorts?
No, they post stuff.
Oh yeah, when they post like a like a meme or an article.
Oh, here I can actually go. No, I can't do much. Okay, well, I don't know how to find the one that I read, but it was about, I think it was Saint. I don't know if it was Paisios. Paisios, is that? Or Ephraim. Kind of dumb, but anyway, he talked about not looking for demons. Not looking for demons everywhere. Like, so when you were talking about that, I was thinking about, don't be careful about what you name, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And I was thinking about it in terms of that, actually.
Yeah.
Because I see that happening quite a bit.
Right.
And I've seen it become an obsession.
Yes.
Which is really not good, in my opinion. I've experienced it as an obsession myself. So
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the thing, right? It's just being cautious about what you name and what you talk about and what you draw attention to. Because really that's the currency we have to spend, right? Is attention. And that's what forms our world. Whatever we're pointing our attention at is what will grow.
Right.
And so you just have to, I think there's St. Paisios talks about, being a bee or a fly, right? Where you're either, the fly is drawn to dung and the bee is drawn to honey,
nectar.
And it's the idea of, that's a simplistic way of putting it, but it's that idea of what it is you're focusing on and what it is you're trying to move toward, I didn't see what he said. Let's see. That's why culture war is so bad on the right. Keep naming the sins and the sins stay at attention. Yeah, that's right. The right has become extremely reactionary. It's like they're really not doing a good job.
Both sides are equally reactionary, honestly.
Fair point. Yeah,
I do.
Yeah, they're not providing us a vision of the future. They're just saying,
and they think they're being different than each other,
right?
And they're being exactly the same.
Yes,
That's
that is definitely true. Yeah, well, and they take turns, right? So that's what was weird. Like Jonathan Peugeot really kind of brought my attention to that. This idea of like flipping roles, So like normally conservatives, what makes you conservative is a high disgust response, right? But during COVID, It was the people on the left who were wearing the masks and terrified and wanted to do the social distancing, right? Out of fear of like germs, it's like, that's a flip. That's an inversion, right? Like, it was like,
well,
what?
that's just because
What's going on here?
right and left don't apply anymore. Sorry.
Right. Yeah. No, I agree.
It's
Yeah.
not applicable.
No, I
Right?
agree. Yeah.
I mean, what's calling itself anti-fascist is fascist, in my opinion.
Well, yeah, that's kind of, I was noticing that. I was actually mentioned that in a comment today that I made on a
Maybe that
video
was
where I was
too
just,
strong a statement, too bold a statement, but I'm saying it anyway.
well, if you look at the classical, like the original definition of fascism was when the state and private corporations
Exactly.
work in tandem to forward the ideals of
Agenda.
the state, right? Or the agenda of the state. Well,
Yeah.
that's exactly what we live in right now, right?
Hello.
Like, where they're calling and telling this company to censor this and censor that, and
I was
don't
watching the
ban that.
the Tucker Carlson conversation that Luke Thompson recommended with Casey Means, I think his last name is, and his sister about the food industry and big pharma. And
Oh yeah,
there it is right there.
yeah. Oh, okay. So that brings up another little anecdote from St. Gabriel. St. Gabriel, the Fool for Christ from Georgia. One time somebody was visiting him, and St. Gabriel handed him a glass of water, and the guy was thirsty, started drinking, and St. Gabriel's like, he was like, oh man. And the guy was like, what? And he goes, you're gonna be trapped easily. And he said, what did I do wrong? Forgive me. And he said, you need to do the sign of the cross over everything that you eat and drink, because that is the main vehicle for sorcery.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that it I mean, obviously we're all eating terrible food, right? Like, I mean, you're on a carnivore diet, but like most of us are still eating garbage. And and I don't think it's just physically bad.
I'm eating the proper human diet. That's what it's called.
Yeah. Oh. That's a little pretentious, but I get it. But if you are in a survival situation, you're not sitting around like eating dandelion greens, right? Like, if you're in a survival situation, the first thing you're looking for is protein. And man, when you find it, it is amazing.
Yeah.
If you've gone a few days without eating and you're in the woods, and you've been walking around
Well,
in the heat,
this is why
bugs,
asceticism has
everything.
really been on my mind, Jeremy, because for one thing, I wouldn't be on the carnivore diet if I didn't have to be. I have like zero self-discipline when it comes to stuffing food in my mouth.
Yeah.
But my body's actually like, sorry, not that. And I suffer terribly for it.
Yeah.
And so I'm stuck with it. I'm literally stuck with it.
Yeah.
And
I'm kind of going into the same situation personally as well.
And so here's the thing. I'm like, this is why I got so blessed by that podcast with Eric Barden, because I realized through something that they talked about that this was actually a gift.
Mm-hmm.
Because I'm always going, oh, I wish I could just eat whatever I wanted. How come I can't eat whatever I want?
Right.
Why do I have to be the one, right? Like, my husband just eats whatever he wants, right? No problem.
Yeah.
And then I'm like, oh no, wait, actually. Because I can, and I'm put in that place of, I don't know. And I'm not even like, I'm not even looking at it as punishment. Like, it's not a punishment.
Mm-hmm.
I have an opportunity to be somewhere where I would have never chose to be. Right? Like that monk who said, I don't feel like eating.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And just the experience. Like, I don't even have words for it. I just realized though, and I started to cry. I was making dinner for my husband, and I heard Eric Varden talk about it, and I realized, okay, I'm not seeing this as a gift.
Mm. Yeah.
So I'm not grateful for one thing. And when I'm not grateful, I'm not humble.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm still kicking at the goads, like Jesus said to Paul,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Why are you kicking against the thorns, my friend? And
Right.
this is my thorn. Okay?
Yeah.
It's my personal thorn. And I'm like, "Oh my God, you're just not learning anything. You're such a, you know,
Yeah.
you're not
Yeah.
learning at all." And even when you're in the middle of it, you're not learning. Like it's just,
Mm-hmm.
and then some Norwegian bishop in a, podcast has to say something that makes me realize, oh, this is a gift,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So,
Your diet has been stripped down, and it's actually, you can think of it this way too. It's very freeing because you don't have to think about what you're going to eat.
no.
You've got a few choices, right? But not many. and
I haven't
uh
been through it because I'm allergic to eggs.
oh wow. Yeah. So
So
it's
that's
like,
part too.
so it frees you up
Yeah.
from that choosing, right? Choosing, picking, choosing. I think there's a lot, man. I started pulling on that thread the other night, actually last night, because I was up most of the night. I don't know why. Sometimes I can't sleep.
Mhm.
And I started pulling on that thread in my mind about how, well, so St. Maximus says that we have so he calls it the gnomic will. It's like the will, it's
Yeah,
like
I
that
know it.
ability to choose, right? To choose what you're going to do. And he said it's actually a weakness. It's like
Yeah, I
our
know.
biggest weakness as humans,
It is.
right?
And that's it's our ability to deliberate. So the other night I was like,
Yeah.
should I go up and eat that leftover steak or should I just have a bag of chips? Because there's a bag of chips in the pantry.
Yeah.
I ate the chips. Not a good thing.
Miserable. Yeah.
Totally not good.
Yeah.
Right. So yeah. And I'm like, what am I at here with the carnivore? I'm almost 200 days in
Wow.
carnivore.
Yeah.
Okay. I know I can't eat anything else. And, to say to someone, well, I'm experimenting. No, that's a lie.
Right.
Right?
Right.
I'm
Right.
just weak. I'm so weak.
Yeah.
And I'm like, and you think, you can't even stop yourself from shoving a chip into your mouth. And you think you can do great things, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
it's such an interesting ride, Jeremy.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and as you get closer, you start, I think you were talking about this earlier, how, you were talking about those little corners that start getting cleaned out, and the little,
Yeah.
the areas of your life you just weren't aware that they were a problem because you were so overwhelmed by the things that you
Yeah, you
did know
kinda
that were
looked
problems.
around, things look tidy, right?
Yeah, right. Yeah. Oh, yeah. There's that too. Right. Yeah. We're
Yeah.
like, oh, no, it's fine, because you're like for me as a guy, like, oh, my guy friend's coming over. That's good enough.
It's good enough.
Yeah, let's wipe that off a little bit. Oh, you'll be fine. Here you go. But yeah, it's different than if, if your priest is coming over to your house, your bishop's coming over your house, you're like, oh, I'm going to clean a
Get
little
the
more.
vacuum cleaner out.
Yeah. And that's kind of what happens spiritually too, right? Like as you get closer to, as you start trying to spend more time in prayer, and this is something else too that I've been pulling on lately, is this idea that prayer finally, like, I grew up as a Mormon, and Mormons are all about expository prayer, right? Like, say what comes to mind. They say don't repeat things, but they constantly repeat things. They have the little phrases. They have the things that they're, because there are some things that are perennial, right? Like, thank you for this
Yeah,
food, right? Like that. You're always thankful for the food. Great. Okay.
yeah.
But anyway, like prayer was just like a conversation, or like a a list, like a, I don't know, like a list of requests, you know, it's like,
The
Lord,
Santa
please,
Claus list.
please, can you please,
Yeah.
thank you, can you please, and you know, I didn't really even know what prayer was because of that. And
Yeah, no, me either.
coming into Orthodoxy,
It
you
was
know,
like,
I've
I
just
want, I
really
want.
been like Father Roman Braga is the one who really brought it home for me, where he just said, prayer is just remembering that you are in the presence of God.
Yeah.
Right. So it's like Heidegger, like you
I got
are naked in the presence of God.
I got there actually, Jeremy. Like I got there way before I even got to be part of this little corner. I literally just stopped. I couldn't even bring myself to ask for things. I was like, this is just ridiculous. I feel like I'm like writing a letter to Santa. Like, you
Yeah.
know?
That's a
That's what
perfect
it is.
analogy, right? Yeah.
And so I started, and I mentioned this many times here in this little corner, but I just started holding up, like if somebody asked for prayer, I prayed for them. But the way I prayed for them was I just held them up to God. And I had like an image, a mental image of that. And
Yeah.
everything else was just a conversation. I'd be like, some thought would flit through my mind, and I'd be like, really? Is that true? Because that's who I'm talking to, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
Or
Yeah.
thank you so much. Something would happen and it would just be
Yeah.
like, you know, like, I don't know, I have a goat that's sick and dying, and I go up in the morning and she's standing on all fours, and I'm like, thank you so much.
Yeah.
Last
That's
night I had a chick that didn't look like it was going to make it. And I prayed, put my hand on the incubator.
sure.
Lord Jesus Christ, have mercy on this little one. Got up in the morning and it was good,
Hmm.
And
Yeah.
so that's how my day is, right? Like it's just a
Yeah.
conversation. And that's actually what made me cry when I listened to Roman Braga for the first time, that interview that we featured that we had to delete, unfortunately.
Yeah.
When he started talking about that was confirmation for me, because I always thought, are you just being stubborn and selfish and you want to do things your own way? Is that what you're doing, Shari?
Yeah.
Right? And
Yeah.
when he said those things, it was just like, oh God, I just wept
Yeah.
and said thank you to God for
Yeah.
that.
Right. Right. Yeah. When you were talking, it reminded me of this prayer. I looked it up while you were talking. It's the Humility Prayer by Saint Philaret of Moscow. This is one of my favorite prayers. Lord, I do not know what to beg of you. You alone know what is needed for me. You love me more than I know how to love you. O Father, give to your slave that for which I do not even know how to beg. I do not dare to ask for either a cross or for consolation. I am only standing before you with my heart open to you. You see my needs, which I do not even know. See and deal with me according to your mercy. Purge and heal me, humble me and raise me. I am in awe before you, and I am silent before your will and your unfathomable ways for me. I am bringing myself as a sacrifice to you. Teach me to pray, and pray yourself within me. Amen.
That's what I keep. Yeah. That's my request. Teach me to pray and pray within me. That's all I can ever bring myself to say.
Yeah.
Honestly, for me.
Yeah. Yeah. I
Because I don't.
definitely say a lot more thank yous to nowadays than requests.
Yeah.
I try to say a lot of thank yous. And one little habit I've tried to pick up is first thing, or as early as I can remember to, I say prayer of thank you for another day,
Yeah.
to let me, thanks for another day to let me learn how to love you more and to repent. And I also pray for those who returned to God in the night, especially those who have no one to pray for them.
Yeah.
That God will have mercy on them as well.
Yeah.
And that's been transformational as well, because it starts you on the right foot, in the right,
Yeah.
it starts you in the right perspective.
Well, this was Father Roman Braga, Stephen, that we mentioned already.
Yeah.
And that was the killer for me, because he said things like, "Oh Lord," that's a prayer, right? It
Yeah.
because and I've done it, and it's a sharing the moment together with God,
Yes.
and you and you bring him into that place with you, right? Um, and I mean, I've always just understood it as, if it wasn't real, if he wasn't real to you, you wouldn't do that. You would
Right.
just wouldn't. But they wouldn't even enter your mind,
Right.
right?
Right. Right.
That's real relationship, and it's just really beautiful.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I've said a prayer sometimes, like when I see something beautiful. It happens with sunrises a lot, where I just say, Lord, thank you for letting me see this beautiful sunrise, and thank you for letting me know it's beautiful.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Thank you for letting me apprehend the
Yeah.
beauty of sunrise and
Yeah, yeah.
participate in it. Right? It's
Yeah.
not just it's a I don't take that for granted either. That I can actually see what's beautiful, because I think that's been destroyed for a lot of people.
Mhm.
It's really sad. It had been for me. I was all about like modernism and no ornamentation and you
Mhm.
know
Mhm.
form over like function over form. I was that guy, and it was a broken noose. It was a broken eyes. I couldn't see. I
Mhm.
was drawn to despair,
Yeah.
because I felt despair, and having learning to see beauty and learning to appreciate beauty, and then learning to be grateful to be able to see beauty has been very healing. It's been very helpful.
Yeah. That's a whole other topic, Jeremy. Beauty.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. So I'm going to go way back in our conversation to when you were talking about Saint Paisios and being drawn to, it was like I was talking about Be the Bee, the story, and not the fly. I did
Yeah.
find the story, and it's short. I'll share it real quick. Some people tell me that they are This is Saint Paisios speaking. Some people tell me that they are scandalized because they see many things wrong in the church. I tell them that if you ask a fly, "Are there any flowers in this area?" it will say, "I don't know about flowers, but over there in that heap of rubbish, you can find all the filth you want." And it will go on to list all the unclean things it has been to. Now, if you ask a honeybee, "Have you seen any unclean things in this area?" it will reply, "Unclean things? No, I have not seen any. The place here is full of the most fragrant flowers." And it
Beautiful.
will go on to name all the flowers of the garden or the meadow. You see, the fly only knows where the unclean things are, while the honeybee knows where the beautiful iris or the hyacinth is. As I have come to understand, some people resemble the honeybee and some people resemble the fly. Those who resemble the fly seek to find evil in every circumstance and are preoccupied with it. They see no good anywhere. But those who resemble the honeybee only see the good in everything they see. The stupid person thinks stupidly and takes everything in the wrong way, whereas the person who has good thoughts, no matter what he sees, no matter what you tell him, maintains a positive and good thought.
Amen.
Amen.
Let's do that.
Yeah. Well, that goes back to, like, I also like this Orthodox teaching of like, whatever you see in the world is coming from your heart.
Mhm.
So if you see garbage and nonsense and you see, evil
I
and
believe that.
it's because that's how your heart is oriented. I think that's what St. Francis is saying there,
Mhm.
right? Where it's
Well, like Martin Shaw said to me, I don't think this is exclusively his statement, but we make things holy by the kind of attention we give to them, right?
mhm, yeah.
And, I was reading a passage. I did a live stream on Girl Country the other day, and I was reading a portion of George MacDonald's Imagination essay. And he quotes Carlyle, a writer, as saying, attentio, attention, right? Attentio means a stretching to.
Mm,
It means stretching towards you're actually stretching towards something, right? That's what that means. And yeah. And I've thought about Martin Shaw saying we make things holy by the kind of attention we give to them. I mean, that could also be something unholy. We could make something unholy holy. Like, and I don't mean turning it into a good thing. I mean, we could actually set it apart in a very unhealthy way, right?
Yes. Fixate on it. Yeah.
Fixate on it, yeah. And the key word there is kind of attention, right?
Yeah.
And this is why that statement by whoever I read this morning on the YouTube post about don't be thinking about demons, right? Like don't be putting all your attention on those things.
Right. Yeah.
And I agree with that, actually.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I've got some stuff that I got to do before it gets totally dark here.
Okay. Sounds good.
So I guess we'll have to wrap it up. It's too bad nobody jumped in with us.
Yeah, nobody joined us. That's all right. We had a good talk.
Not this
I
time.
enjoyed our conversation.
We wandered, we meandered a lot.
Yeah, we talked about a lot of different things.
But it was good.
Right. Yeah, that's good.
It was good. And have you got some ideas for next week, Jeremy?
Well, we could talk about St. Herman next week. I think that would be great. St. Herman of Alaska.
Did we didn't do St. Gabriel, did we?
We haven't done St. Gabriel yet. We could talk about St. Gabriel.
Because you wanted to do him last week, I thought.
Yeah, I know. It'll work out. It'll work out when he's ready, when it's time.
Everyone's vying for attention.
Yeah, exactly. Right. These other saints keep like saying, "Oh, wait, me first, me first."
Yeah.
And St. Gabriel's humble, so he'll wait.
Okay. Well, we'll just see what happens.
Yeah. Something will happen. We'll figure it out between now and then. Yeah. Right now, I'm thinking either St. Herman or St. Gabriel. That would be great.
Yeah. St. Herman had he has a really long story. So we thought maybe we'll do him separately or something.
Well, and St. Gabriel too has like there's a whole book of his life, and a lot of stories. There's a really great documentary for anyone who's interested. There was a priest who traveled to Georgia and interviewed people who knew him, and went to like his little house and went to the different places where he had been. But like I said, especially, and they shared the story. They were telling the story as they went as a kind of narration, but it's interspersed with interviews with people who knew him. Mm-hmm. And just powerful. And what I really like about him too, and a sign that he's a true fool for Christ, is that there were also people who did not like him at all. Right? There were people who just thought he was, disrespectful and inappropriate and crazy, and and then there are others who saw him, and I'll tell you the reason I fell in love with him. The first time I fell in love with St. Gabriel, it was when I saw an icon. Okay, let me just look up the icon. I don't even want to explain it. I just want to show you the icon. Hold on.
I remember his beard. It's an awesome beard.
Yeah, he has a great beard. Let's see. Okay, so let me share my screen. I found it. No, not that. Yeah. So that's that's when I knew that St. Gabriel and I had a lot in common. So there was and actually this icon, changes all of the proportions because it's an icon. But in reality, there was a large building. There was this banner of Lenin, and it was like 50 feet tall. It was this huge banner of Lenin, and it was this big. It was like on his birthday, or it was on his death day, I think, where they were all commemorating. Like they forced everybody in the city to come to commemorate. And they were going to tell stories about Lenin, all this stuff. And St. Gabriel got a got a torch and went up into the window of the building and lit it on fire. And once it started on fire, he was telling everybody to go home because they were participating in idolatry.
Right.
And he was arrested and tortured. And they used chemicals. They basically put him on heroin and then took him off of heroin. So he was going through those withdrawals where like all of your body feels like you're in pins and needles. And then they would beat him while he was going through opiate withdrawals. And they did that multiple times and used other chemical torture on him as well. And so that's where some people thought, well, that's where St. Gabriel went a little crazy. And it probably did have an effect, but he was already a fool for Christ before he was burning that banner. But yeah, seeing that icon, I was like, okay, St. Gabriel and I. Simpatico.
How could you not love the guy, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And he's from Georgia, right?
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
So many interesting people from those countries.
Yeah.
Well,
yeah, I know we keep dragging it out. Sorry, I get excited.
It's okay.
Talking about things like that. So
I just got to go now.
Yep, I understand.
I have a little bit of a sore back. Well, I have a lot of a sore back actually, and so now I got to move.
Ooh, yeah.
Just got to get up and move a little bit, and then I got to put my chickens away and stuff, and yeah.
Sounds fun. Sounds fun. All right. Well, thanks for sharing your evening with me. I appreciate it.
Oh yeah, same here. And thanks everybody who's been with us and watching. And we'll see you next Tuesday.
God bless you. May heaven consume you.
Yes.